I'm Peter Dale Scott. I'm a Canadian, born in Montreal. I taught at McGill for 1 year in political science, was a Canadian diplomat for 4 years, then went to the University of California in Berkeley. I thought for 1 year, but in fact I went in 1961 and I've retired there, and now it's 2007. It was quite obvious from that day that whatever 9/11 was, it was not something done by 19 Arabs following the directions of a man with a beard in a cave in Afghanistan. And I'm sort of used to looking for deeper explanations because I wasted 30 years of my life studying the John F. Kennedy assassination. And then I studied Watergate, and then I studied Contragate. I actually went to Washington and worked for people who were backing Senator Kerry in his investigation of the Contras. So I've become quite comfortable thinking about America as having a regular history and also what I call a deep history, which every now and then surfaces in a Watergate or a Contragate, Irangate, and now 9/11. An event, I call them deep events, because you know right away that there's far more going on than what the newspapers are going to tell you, and it may take you a long time to get to the truth. But what I say with absolute confidence is we don't know the full story of 9/11. And I say with almost as much confidence, we do know what they're covering up. And they are covering up the role played by Vice President Cheney on that day to issue some very strange orders which were not even mentioned by the 9/11 Commission report and which still need to be explained. Canada has a very direct stake in the sanity and rationality of the government of the United States. And I think there's been a downward trend in this respect for about 20 or 30 years now, but very markedly since 9/11. All kinds of changes in the American political system have been introduced which are damaging to the rule of law, damaging to human rights, and of particular concern to Canada, have allowed the Bush administration to engage in very dangerous, reckless acts of unprovoked aggression in Central Asia, in case particularly Iraq, of course. And this, of course, is a matter of extreme concern to Canada, and it's going to provoke, has already provoked intense anti-American hatred in other parts of the world, and that we will not be spared from that. Terrorists have come to this country, Canada, because of things that America has been doing. So it's very urgent to get to a more rational American government, and I passionately believe that the best way to do that is to get to the truth of what happened on 9/11, which I think will undo the present system of government that we have in America. A structuralist. He's a structuralist. He believes, you know, that you have a ruling system and then you have the oppressed people. And he's not interested in personality changes at the top of the system, because for him it's not a matter of personalities. It's a matter of a well-organized, ruthless engine of domination. So it doesn't matter if it's Kennedy or Johnson.
But I mean, he leaves intact the whole criminal structure.
I think that it's ultimately a superficial analysis. Yeah, I do. I think we've shaped each other to some extent, because when the Pentagon Papers came out, originally, I don't think we were aware that we disagreed about anything, except that I was never quite as strident in my condemnation of America as he was. But then my analysis of the Pentagon Papers was, I first put forward the thesis that there were two NASMs, and that Kennedy's NASM was preparing to withdraw the bulk of troops by '65, and Johnson's NASM annulled that and got ready for the big buildup. It wasn't itself the buildup, just got rid of the Kennedy withdrawal. Well, Howard Zinn wrote me a letter. Chomsky and Zinn were editing the papers, and Chomsky was out of the country. Howard wrote to me and said, "You don't want to say this. You're suggesting that there are differences between the rulers and the ruling class." And I said, "Yes, you've got it right. That's what I'm trying to say." And he said, "That's bad politics." He said it in the first letter. He said, "That's bad politics." And Chomsky, who was more fierce on this point than Howard, at least had the generosity to let me publish my paper. But he's been attacking it ever since. I used once upon a time to consider myself a part of the left, and I know a lot of people on the left, like Noam Chomsky and so on. But there's obviously been a separation between my analysis of American politics, which makes me very interested in splits in government, competing factions at the top, versus a lot of the traditional old left and now the new left, which I consider the old new left, who are, I think, very limited by their structuralist analysis of America. They see a ruling system and then an oppressed public, and they're not interested in divisions inside that system. They believe the system is rational. I believe it's profoundly irrational and sick. They believe the system knows what it's doing. I think the system is full of competing factions who are in effect destroying what each other is trying to do, and that's very relevant to 9/11, where you have the oil lobby that want to dominate oil, and you have the Israel lobby that wants to keep Israel strong, and the oil lobby wants to keep OPEC because that keeps prices up, and the Israel AIPAC lobby wants to destroy OPEC because it gives the Arab countries money to arm themselves with. So that's the sort of thing that fascinates me. And the old left and the old new left continue saying that those sort of things are not important. That's conspiracy theory and has nothing to do with what they think is a more elemental, fundamental analysis of the conflict between the ruling class and the public. I was very excited when we got a 9/11 commission and knew we would get a 9/11 commission report. And I knew that it was going to be a report I disagreed with, just like the Warren Commission and the Warren report about the Kennedy assassination. But it was a whole bunch of new evidence, and we would be able to see more clearly what was sensitive, what they could report accurately, and what they had to lie about. And we got that in the case of the report. So it becomes very important to know that the man who really controlled the direction of the investigation of the commission and the man who very much controlled the writing of the report was Philip Zelikow, this was supposed to be a group outside the government, but Zelikow had written a book with Condoleezza Rice. There was no way you could think of him as an outsider. And I understand that as a reward for the job he did with the report, they put him on the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, which is a group you don't hear about very much, but is a very key link between what you might call the White House and the ruling establishment of the United States.